All right. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something called corporate governance. It's basically the hidden framework, the rulebook, that's supposed to keep the world's biggest companies playing fair. I mean, have you ever really wondered what stops a massive global corporation from just going completely off the rails? What's that invisible force holding it all together?
Well, it's definitely not magic. The answer is actually a powerful and, yeah, often pretty complex system of rules and oversight.
That whole system is really the foundation for everything we're going to talk about. So let's start with the most basic question of all. Why do companies even need these rules in the first place? So, what exactly is corporate governance? The best way to think about it is like a company's internal operating system. It's this whole mix of people, policies, and procedures, the whole shebang that guides every single decision. And the goal? Meeting the objectives of its stakeholders. And that word, stakeholders, that's absolutely crucial. See, we're not just talking about shareholders, the owners. We're talking about everyone with a stake in what the company does. We're talking about the employees, the suppliers who depend on them, the customers buying their stuff, even the neighbors who live near a factory, and of course the government regulators. They all have skin in the game.
Okay, but for this whole system to work, you have to have a clear power structure. So who's really calling the shots? Let's break down that chain of command. The hierarchy is actually surprisingly clear. It all starts at the top with the shareholders. They're the actual owners. They're the ones who elect the board of directors, who kind of act as the guardians of the company's long-term vision. Then, that board appoints the corporate officers, the managers who are running the day-to-day operations. It's a very clear top-down flow of authority.
And this whole governance thing, it really comes in two flavors. First, you've got internal governance. That's the company's own personal rulebook, things like its charter and bylaws. But then you've got external governance, and those are the laws of the land enforced by outside regulators. And every single company has to play by both sets of rules, no exceptions. So let's zoom in on that internal governance piece for a minute. How exactly do companies create their own internal playbook to keep themselves on the straight and narrow? This quote right here really gets to the heart of it. Governance, risk management, and control. They are not separate things. You can't have one without the others. Think of it like a three-legged stool. You can't set a direction for the company without understanding the risks, and you can't possibly manage those risks if you don't have controls in place. They have to work together perfectly. So what are these internal controls anyway? Well, they're the specific systems a company puts in place to manage risk. It can be something as simple as requiring 2 signatures on any check over, say, $5,000. The whole point is to provide what's called reasonable assurance that the company's hitting its targets, whether that's in operations, financial reporting, or just complying with the law. And maybe most importantly, they're the first line of defense against fraud. But I want to pause on that phrase for a second. Reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. That distinction is so critical. It's basically an admission that no system is perfect, right? Controls are absolutely essential, but they can be beaten, especially when people decide to work together to commit fraud. And that inherent risk is exactly why those external rules are so important. In the US, 2 landmark laws completely changed the game for corporations, the FCPA and SOX. So let's turn back the clock to the 1970s. There was a huge problem brewing. Big-name corporations were using secret payments and slush funds for international bribery just to win business overseas. Something had to be done. And that something was the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, or FCPA. This law made it flat-out illegal to offer or authorize corrupt payments to foreign officials, political parties, or candidates, all for the purpose of getting or keeping business. It drew a very clear line in the sand. Okay. Now, fast forward to the early 2000s. A brand new crisis hits. You had these massive accounting scandals at companies like Enron and WorldCom, and it absolutely shattered investor confidence in the entire market. So, in response, the U.S. Congress came down, and they came down hard. They passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which everyone just calls SOX. And let me tell you, this was a complete game changer for corporate accountability. SOX brought in these huge, sweeping changes.
All of a sudden, there was a new sheriff in town, the PCOOB, to police the auditors themselves. Audit committees on company boards, they now had to be totally independent from management. And in a massive shift, CEOs and CFOs now had to personally sign off on their financial reports. The buck now stopped, literally, right with them.
And here's one of the biggest changes in the whole law. Under a part of it known as Section 404, auditors suddenly had to issue not one, but two opinions. One was on the financial statements, which was always the case, but now they had to give a second opinion on the company's own internal controls. The level of scrutiny basically doubled, just like that.
So with all these internal playbooks and external laws, how do we, just regular people on the outside, know if a company is actually following the rules? Well, that's where the ultimate report card comes in, the audit opinion.
Yeah, the final verdict on a company's financial honesty comes from an independent auditor. Their opinion is basically the grade they give the company's report card for the entire world to see.
And these grades, man, they have huge consequences. An unmodified opinion, that's the gold star, a clean bill of health telling investors everything looks good. A qualified opinion is like a yellow flag. Mostly okay, but there's a specific issue the auditor wants you to know about. An adverse opinion is a massive red flag. It's a failing grade. It means the financial statements are just not trustworthy. And a disclaimer, that's a total catastrophe. The auditor is basically throwing their hands up and saying they couldn't even get enough info to do their job. For any public company, anything other than unmodified can send its stock price into a nosedive. So that kind of brings us to the final thought here. The rules and regulations around corporate governance are, without a doubt, stronger than they have ever been. The guardrails are higher. But as business and finance just keep evolving at lightning speed, you really have to wonder, is it actually enough to prevent the next big scandal? That, my friends, is truly the billion-dollar question.